Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for joining us for this candidate check-in Zoom. We're waiting on some folks to sign up, and looks like they're coming in pretty fast. So bear with us, and we'll get started in just a few minutes. Everyone is muted, and so thank you for your patience, and we'll get started shortly. Please go ahead and review the questions if you like, and pick your two favorites, and we'll answer them later.
The candidates can pick one too.
Absolutely. Everybody can pick. Yes. So I see Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch with us, Jeremy Hendricks with us, Nathan Boynton. Thank you, candidates, for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we're really interested in hearing what you all have to say. I don't see our other two candidates yet, Samantha Lopez-Resendez or John Nash, but hopefully they'll be on soon. And I may have, there's John.
John just got on.
There he is. Okay, great.
I think we're just waiting for Samantha, right?
That's correct. So we'll give it just another couple of minutes and then we'll begin. Okay, we have a lot to cover, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Mike Kilalia. I'm chair of Indivisible 1431. Thank you all for attending so much. You should be able to see my screen with some PowerPoint bullets there. Everyone will be muted, as I said. If you haven't yet, please go ahead and select a couple of questions for the candidates in the poll that you can see on your screen. I apologize. Apparently, there's a character limit, and some questions could well be truncated. I know for a fact that question 2 is, and it should say not lowering home value for property owners, but I think that'll be pretty clear from the context. So hopefully there's not too many more that are too wordy. I'll fix that moving forward. So we're going to start in a moment. We will send PDFs of these slides, and of course we'll have the video that we will post on YouTube. So I'm going to introduce each candidate in turn. After I introduce each candidate, we will get to hear them make a 7-minute statement. They'll speak in ballot order. And once everyone has completed their statements, then we'll turn to the questions. I'll read the top questions to every candidate. When we do the questioning, we're going to kind of shift the order. So he who speaks first in opening statements will answer the question 1 last, and we'll keep rotating in that order. So no one is always comes answer the first question. No one ever always answers the last. So, okay. So I want to welcome our candidates again.
Samantha
Nathan
joined.
Boynton, Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, and I don't know that, yeah, and Samantha Lopez-Resendez. Thank you for joining, Samantha. Jeremy Hendricks and John Hash. Thank you all for joining us. And I'm going to stop the share, and I'm going to invite Nathan Boynton to lead us off with a 7-minute statement. Nathan has lived in Austin for 13 years and he works with small businesses. So Nathan, please give us a summary of why you're running and what you want to do.
All right. Can everyone hear me all right? I'm having to pull off to the side of the road and do this through my phone's Bluetooth. All right. Um, so why I'm running? Well, I usually just say I'm frustrated with a lot of stuff going on. But growing up, you used to be able to say Nazis are bad and pedophiles are bad and not have that be a political statement where people are like, oh, I know who you voted for. I find that insane. And then with rights being taken away, like reproductive rights, and just it seems like a lot of politicians care more about their corporations and billionaire donors than their people they're supposed to represent. So I'm just frustrated with all that, and that is why I'm running. Healthcare is and I am going to throw out a bunch of numbers and statistics, and I'm sorry to bore people with numbers. But healthcare is a pivotal issue of my campaign. 21% of Texans do not have health insurance. Texas's GDP is second out of all the states, but we're 29th in healthcare. I find that unacceptable. I would want to regulate the cost of healthcare, co-pays, insurance, all that medicine. I think all that should be regulated. Like insulin, for example, that's sold $12 in Canada. So there's no reason it can't be sold that cheap here in the States. Because those companies are making a profit there, so they should be able to sell it at that price here, and they need to have some regulations to regulate that. I also want to protect reproductive rights and gender affirming care, because I believe health decisions should be between a doctor and the patient, not a politician. Education is also a huge thing. Texas is 32nd in education. So I want to pay teachers better, hire more teachers. So you have less students per classroom, so you can have a better teacher student ratio. Another big thing, I want to make sure every child in Texas gets free meals at school. It's only estimated it only costs $25 million a year to feed every kid in school. I also want to get rid of private prisons because justice shouldn't be for profit. We should focus on rehabilitation and fairness. And just to throw some numbers out there, private prisons on average cost about $21 million more a year for those people to be if they were in a state prison. So it's just a waste of taxpayers' money. In private prisons, the people who get sentenced there tend to have a 7% higher, longer longer like time that they spend in there than opposed to people at state prisons. So I don't think that's fair that they should have to go to jail longer just because, that judge or whoever makes money or gets donations from the private prisons. Let's see. Sorry, I was going to have some notes to go over to make sure I stay on track, so I'm going to jump all over the place here, and I apologize. Let's see. Sorry, I just lost where I was at. All right. So some things that I would like to do. I'd also like to decriminalize marijuana because it is on the low end estimated that Texas spends $227 million a year enforcing marijuana. On the high end, it's estimated it could be up to $350 million. That's just enforcing it for putting people in prison, court cost, judges, all that stuff. I think that's a waste of taxpayers' money when that is legal in other states. And it's given people criminal backgrounds that now makes it harder for them to find jobs and find places to live. I also want to focus on getting affordable housing and transportation, so people can afford and to live where they're at and be able to get to work safely. Let's see. Sorry. So some plans on how to do some of these things. As I said, if we decriminalize the marijuana, that saves 200 on the low end, $227 million a year in tax revenue. So we could put that towards education and healthcare. And why I believe we can easily make healthcare more affordable here in Texas. I'm going to use Canada as an example. We just need to work with our comptroller, and if we don't know how to do something, I think we should ask for help. Canada has their GDP is $2.2 trillion a year with 41 million people. Texas is $2.7 trillion a year with 32 million people. Canada has 9 million more people and makes 500 billion less a year, but they can afford to give their people free healthcare. So there is no reason that we cannot do that here. Let's see. And also, like I always like to try to tell people, there's more registered Democrats in Texas than Republicans. In August of last year, there was 8.1 million Democrats compared to 6.6 million Republicans. So I always try to tell people, don't let the Republicans lie to you and tell you this is a red state and your vote doesn't matter. It does. We can make changes. So we can get Gina in office in the governor's seat. We can make the changes we need to make. And I also believe we should hold people accountable. I'm going to throw two Democrats under the bus. So in the recent DHS funding, there was two Texas Democrats that voted for that. And that included a huge budget for ICE. One of the Democrats receives money from the GEO Group. They own private prisons, and most of the detention centers for ICE here in Texas are ran by private companies like the GEO Group and the Civic Corps. So I think we should hold those Democrats accountable that voted for that, especially if they're receiving money from private prisons and then they own the detention centers. I don't believe it's not money, decision making for why they did that instead of representing their constituents. And I think that's just about everything. I was going to try to be quicker than the 7 minutes here if I could, or if I used it all up, I apologize.
You're up.
Okay.
Perfect timing, Nathan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. And I appreciate your comments. And next up is Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch. Kate is an immigration attorney and a community activist, as well as a proud Austinite. So, Kate, why should you get the Democratic nomination for HD50?
Well, thank you, Mike, and thank you, Indivisible. I am a big fan of Indivisible and the work that you do, and I've had the great honor and joy in being a speaker at several of your rallies over the last year, and I think that they are really great. They're really well run, well attended. The messaging is always awesome. So anyway, it's an honor to be here, and it's probably our last forum as a candidate slate now that early voting has begun. And I just want to say to Nathan and Sam and Jeremy and John and William, who's not here, that it has been an honor and a privilege to be on the campaign trail with you. I think that we have done a great job staying positive and supportive as a slate, and it's been an adventure. So my name is Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, and I'm an immigration lawyer. That's my mission and my passion in life. And like Mike said, I'm born and raised here in Austin. I've lived all over Austin. I've lived in District HD50 for over 20 years, and I went to UT for both undergrad and law school, and fell in love with immigration law in law school, working with families that were detained. And I have been working ever since on supporting immigrant families and keeping them together and keeping them from being detained, or doing my best to do that. And I have served as Commissioner on Immigrant Affairs under both Mayor Adler and Mayor Watson. I have a law firm that represents immigrants all around Central Texas. I helped found a national nonprofit called Vicina that expands pro bono representation to immigrants all over the United States. During the first Trump administration, every week I took pro bono lawyers to the family detention centers to help prepare asylum seekers for their credible fear interviews. And I've created a community project called Bus Sin Fronteras, which is a bus that brings Know Your Rights materials to immigrant communities where they are. So that's what I do. That's what I'm all about. And obviously this is a time right now when what I do is very much in the news. Just this morning I was talking about the case of Juan Nicholas, which is a new low at the Dilley Family Detention Center. And Juan Nicholas is a 2-month-old baby who was detained in January with his mom, a newborn, in a facility that had a measles outbreak. And he began to have respiratory distress last night and was taken to the hospital. And I just, like, right before this meeting started, got an update that he was deported with his mom. And they took him, this newborn baby, sick with respiratory illness, down to the border, and they gave them the money that they had in their commissary account and nothing else. And she had to borrow a phone to call someone and tell them where she is with the sick infant. So that is what I am here to do in life, is to fight against these atrocities. And I also am a lawyer and am a very political person and am active and passionate about lots of other issues too. And I'm a mom. I care deeply about education. I care deeply about gun safety. I think it is abhorrent that in a state where Uvalde happened, we have not raised the age of gun purchasing to 21, when the perpetrator in Uvalde tried to buy an AR-15 when he was 17 years old and couldn't. And then when he turned 18, he went out and bought that gun and slaughtered children. And the legislature has yet to do anything about it. I think it is an embarrassment to the state of Texas. I am a very progressive candidate on LGBTQIA issues. I believe in gender affirming care, and I believe that it is up to the doctors, even of children, to determine if they should be provided gender affirming care, doctors and the parents, of course. And I don't think that parents of trans children should be run out of the state. I believe in women's reproductive justice and a woman's right to choose. And I believe in supporting education all around the state and making sure that every child is supported. And I also think that we can't take our eyes off of the attack on higher education as well. I'm very concerned about the consolidation of Mexican American Studies departments and Black History departments and Women's History departments in oversight and accountability. And I'm really, really concerned about the police state under Greg Abbott that is going after immigrants. And I would just like to note that, you know, in a place like Minnesota, where CBP goes in and thousands of people get arrested, we all see it because there is this pushback at the state and local level, when in fact, more people were arrested in Texas in January than were in Minnesota. But in Texas, they were arrested by DPS agents who pulled them over for false reasons, or by sheriff's departments, or even in some cases, police departments. So we have created in Texas a multi-layered police state that is attacking and disappearing our immigrants quietly, rather than loudly, and shooting people in the head on the streets like they did in Minnesota. But it is just as insidious and just as horrific. And my commitment and my promise in the Capitol is to never take my eyes off that issue and to never stop talking about it, even if it is divisive and hard. And even if people say you can't win on immigration, I will never stop talking about immigration. And that's why I'm running. And I'd love your support. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Kate. We appreciate your comments very much. And next up is Samantha Lopez-Resendez. Samantha is Chief of Staff to State Representative Donna Howard. Welcome, Samantha. And I would ask you the same question. Why should you be the Democratic nominee for HD50?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Mike. Thank you for having all of us. I completely agree with Kate. It has been really an honor to be in this slate with everyone in this candidate slate. Everyone is a great candidate, and I'm just really thrilled to be a part of this group. I think we call ourselves the Freedom Fighters, which is probably the friendliest campaign in all of Texas, but I love it. We're all on the same team at the end of the day, and we all believe in the same things. We just have different ways of getting there. But hi, everyone. Good evening, and thank you so much for being here and spending your afternoon with us. My name is Samantha Lopez-Resendez, and I'm running for Texas House District 50 because I truly believe that this moment in our democracy demands leadership that is prepared, principled, and grounded in lived experience. I'm a former bilingual educator, a longtime legislative advisor, and for 4 years, I served as Chief of Staff to Representative Donna Howard. For 7 years, I worked inside the Texas legislature on public education, higher education, healthcare, energy, water, and public safety policy. So you name a policy area, and I have touched it. I have advocated for it. I've worked on specific policy solutions for it. I did not just watch debates from the sidelines. I helped draft legislation, negotiate amendments, build coalitions, and protect communities when they were under attack. I'm running because I've seen what happens when decisions are made without centering the people who will be most affected. In this time in my life, I am running as a former bilingual educator, a woman of reproductive age, and a proud daughter of immigrants, all three of which have been in constant under attack over the last several years. We've seen public education continue to be dismantled by the current administration. Our schools are underfunded, teachers are underpaid, and districts are being forced into impossible choices. Here in Central Texas, we're facing the closure of multiple school campuses, and that's not just a budget line item. That is a loss of community, of institutional knowledge, and of opportunities for families. And as a former educator, I know what strong public schools mean for economic mobility. As a legislative staffer, I know what it takes to fund them properly. I helped pass legislation expanding math pathways so more students could access Algebra 1 in 6th grade and increase their likelihood of earning a post-secondary credential by 6 times. That means by no diversity, equity, inclusion, which this state has, again, also dismantled, we are guaranteeing diversity in our higher ed spaces because of effective data-driven legislation like this that I was incredibly proud to work on for 3 to 4 years before it eventually and finally got passed. I have worked on protecting higher education access, including defending in-state tuition for undocumented students under the Texas DREAM Act and pushing back against efforts to criminalize peaceful on-campus protesting on our college campuses. Education should open doors, not close them. And I think what's happening in our higher ed and our public education spaces is absolutely detrimental to the future of this state. I've been at the forefront of those fights. It wasn't until the Department of Justice sued the state of Texas for having the Texas DREAM Act, which allowed DACA recipients to qualify for in-state tuition in the state of Texas. The Department of Justice sued us the day that we gavelled out after legislative session, and this legislation had effectively died. We had stopped it in its tracks, and Republicans agreed with us that this was bad policy, and it wasn't until the Trump administration sued us, and of course our Attorney General said, okay, we will get rid of it as soon as possible. This happened 2 months before the August or the fall semester began for our college students, and it left entire cohorts of students without a plan and without the stability of knowing what they were going to pay in tuition. And I fought so hard to defeat that legislation in the Texas House, and which we did successfully. And it wasn't until the Trump administration came in and dismantled that program. Healthcare is another deeply personal and urgent issue for me. I've been at the forefront of fights to protect reproductive health care in this state as Chief of Staff to Representative Donna Howard, who is the chairwoman of the Women's Health Caucus. I've worked through legislative sessions where access to care was chipped away piece by piece, and I've seen how confusing and dangerous the legal landscape has become for patients and providers alike. Healthcare decisions belong to patients and doctors, not politicians. That includes reproductive health care, miscarriage care, which is abortion care, contraception access, and life-saving treatment. It also includes ensuring insurance companies cannot deny or delay necessary care simply because it affects their bottom line. Texans deserve dignity, clarity, and autonomy when it comes to their health. Public safety is also central to why I'm running. As Chief of Staff to Rep. Howard, I worked on evidence-based gun safety policy that focused on prevention and education. I helped secure $2.5 million in our budget for the Keep 'em Safe Texas campaign. We had originally funded in 2019 from 1 million, and we increased that to 2.5 million. And with that extra support, we're able to get age-appropriate resources and literature about gun safety into our public schools at K through 12. It's incredibly difficult to pass raising the age. I've been at the forefront of that fight as well, and it was absolutely atrocious what happened in Uvalde. And we need fighters that are not only going to find solutions around this Republican legislature, but also ensure that we are providing education to all of our students. Because frankly, the reality is the number one cause of death amongst our youth in Texas is accidental shootings. This should not be happening. So I am absolutely ready to ensure that we are providing educational materials for our young individuals here across the state to minimize those unintended deaths. Affordability is also another issue that I hear about every single day as I'm knocking on doors 7 hours a day. Central Texas is growing, but housing costs are pushing our teachers, our first responders, and our state employees out of the communities that they serve. Housing affordability is not separate from education or workforce development. It's all deeply connected. And if the people who power our communities cannot afford to live here, our entire region will suffer. We need smart housing solutions that prioritize essential workers and support responsible local decision making. And we need to plan growth instead of reacting to it after communities have already been displaced. So why am I running? I know I have 20 seconds left. I'm running because I bring institutional knowledge at a moment when our delegation is losing experienced public education champions. We're losing Rep. James Tallarico and Representative Gina Ahosa, who served on the Public Education Committee. I'm running because I understand how the legislature works and how to move policy forward and be.
Well, there we go. Thank you, Samantha, very much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your
Excellent
time.
comments. Everyone out there participating and listening, if you haven't taken an opportunity to pick a couple questions in our poll, please do, because that's going to guide what questions these fine candidates get in a little while. Okay, and next we will hear from Mr. Jeremy Hendricks. Jeremy is Assistant Business Manager and Legislative and Policy Director for the Southwest Laborers District Council. So Jeremy, welcome, and please tell us why you should be a Democratic nominee for HD50.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks to the other candidates and all of you for having us this evening. I do believe this is probably our last forum, but it's the only one that has Oscar-style playoff music, so I love that. So I'm Jeremy Hendricks. I'm a candidate for House District 50. I'm a 20-year labor leader. I'm an organizer, a neighborhood organizer, a president in Windsor Hills here in Northeast Austin, and a longtime community activist. And I'm running because working people in Texas deserve a government that shows up for them, not one that attacks them, divides us, and really is giving away our future to billionaires. I come out of the labor movement. It's what I breathe. It's what I think every day. And everything I do starts with one simple idea that every Texan deserves dignity, a fair shot, and a real voice in their own democracy. And that's why I'm really grateful for the work that Indivisible does and the important work that we've done together in the past. You all show up every time to defend democracy, protect our neighbors, and push back against extremism, which every day is growing. And so I really want to talk about really where our issues align in the work that we've done over the years and what I want to do in the legislature. I know one of the biggest fights we share is protecting our democracy. We've watched extremists try to rig the system through gerrymandering, voter suppression, attacks on local control, and I have spent my entire career organizing working people, and I know democracy only works when everyday Texans have power. And in the legislature, I will continue to fight to protect voting rights, strengthen local decision making. I have been one of the biggest voices against preemption, which is something that is absolutely plaguing our state, and really to stop the state from steamrolling our communities just like they have for years. We need a government, we deserve a government that listens to people, not the political insiders and not the billionaires. And so some of the other things that we've really worked on and that I absolutely stand for is on the front lines against the voucher fight. I know this group has been right there for every step of the way, and I'm with you because vouchers drain money from our neighborhood schools and they hand it to private interest. And I also am a proud former public teacher. I'm endorsed by the AFT, Education Austin, educators and unions because they know what I'll fight for and where I stand because I've been fighting for the same things for years. And that includes fully funded public schools, higher teacher pay, ending harmful state takeovers, reducing high stakes testing, really opposing this Christian nationalist curriculum that they're shoving down school districts' throats, and also expanding career technology pathways, because that's one of the things I think is important to really building our local communities and really helping folks out of poverty. And as we all know, we all believe the same thing. Strong public schools are the backbone of strong communities, so we cannot let the extremists dismantle them. Something else I've worked on for years, and I know that Indivisible has done some powerful work on, is standing up for our immigrant communities and our families. And no family at all ever should live in fear of being torn apart. And I'm not new to this fight. I've spent the last 15 years working alongside Workers Defense Project, Equal Justice Center, Central Texas Interfaith, and others to protect our immigrant communities. And really, we have to have community-driven solutions that keep families safe, ensure humane treatment, and prevent local jurisdictions from being used as tools for federal overreach. And I know that's something that APD is debating right now, and that we really have to make sure isn't happening across the state of Texas, because immigrant workers are part of our communities and our economy, and they deserve the dignity and respect of every single American and Texan. And so, obviously, as a labor leader, in the most dangerous state for workers in America, I've walked picket lines, I've negotiated contracts, I have fought and won living wages in the South, and the first living wages to be in the South, and the highest living wages here in Austin and Harris County. I've also fought for safe job sites, again, in the most dangerous state, and really apprenticeship pathways for disadvantaged communities. And I fight every single day for workers, and all they want is a fair wage, a safe job, and dignity on the job site. And so that's why it's led me to do things like found the Texas Climate Jobs Project, to fight for climate change and really to protect clean energy workers, and also to found the Austin Infrastructure Academy, to create wraparound services and pathways to family supporting careers, especially for women and people of color. And in the legislature, I'm going to continue fighting for the same things I've fought for decades, and that's living wages. One of the first bills I file is arrest break protection, and we need somebody that can actually get that done for Texans. We need apprenticeship pathways. And last session, I'm very proud that we actually doubled apprenticeship funding in a very divisive session, but because it was good for everyone and it wasn't a partisan issue. And that hadn't happened in over 15 years. So very proud of that. And really infrastructure that creates long-term careers and doesn't hurt our environment or our communities. And we've got to build safe job sites and really also stronger protections for public workers. That's why I've got the Texas State Employees Union behind me, and a lot of other folks, because they know I've been in that fight and I will continue to be. And we all know when working people do well, the state does well, and this is a people-powered campaign, and so that's what this is all about. And really, I know I'm probably getting near my end here. I'm running because working families, students, and retirees deserve a proven leader, someone who shows up, who listens, and will fight for a better Texas, and that's who I am. And groups like Indivisible are the heartbeat of our local democracy. I want to be a partner you can count on, someone that shows up every time and fights alongside you, just like I have in the past. And really, I'm proud that our campaign has knocked over 19,000 doors. We're working very hard because I believe that the people of House District 50 deserve a real voice. And I'm proud to be endorsed by Congressman Kazar, DA Garza, Councilmember Siegel, and over 170 other elected officials and community leaders that know that we are the right candidate and the right person for this job. I'm also proud to be endorsed by 44 out of 45 organizations that have endorsed. That's every labor union, every Democratic club that is endorsed, groups like Equity Action, ORA, the Texas Progressive Caucus, Asian Texans for Justice, and so many more. You can go to my website to see that at www.hendricksfortexas.com. And the reason we've got these is not because of who I am. It is a testament to the work that we have done in the trenches, fighting alongside each other in this community for over 20 years to protect our most precious rights, our most vulnerable communities. And I believe if we stand together, labor, educators, activists, working families, that we can build a Texas that really works for everyone. So I hope you'll join this movement. We're working harder than anyone else, and we're going to win this thing with your help. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate your good comments. Very informative. Okay, and our next candidate is Mr. John Hash. John has worked for years in youth outreach at both the high school and college levels and has lived in Austin nearly 15 years. Welcome, John, and please tell us in 7 minutes why you should be the Democratic nominee for HD50.
All right, if we got the timer going, Mike, thank you very much for inviting us. And again, you've heard from the other candidates, we have been a wonderful group as we have been going through these forums. I want to remind everybody, the word Texas derived from Tejas. It's a Caddo word. It means friendship. That's really what I think we should always be striving for, especially as candidates, people representing one another. And that's what I want to always look towards. I wasn't born in Texas. My dad worked for the military. I was born in San Francisco, and we moved around a lot. I ended up finishing high school in San Antonio, making my way to the University of Texas. And but one thing with all the moving that my dad ensured we had growing up was a sense of community. And he did that by giving back, whether that was leadership in youth leagues, Rotary clubs, or Kiwanis clubs. And for my brother and I, it was very much rooted in Boy Scouts. I believe his influence to us pushed us to earn our Eagle Scout. And I think it's what led me to do the work that I did. When I graduated from the University of Texas, I went into youth education outreach. My first program that I worked for, Advise Texas, worked with high school students in a Title I school in San Antonio, Roosevelt High School, go Rough Riders. But we worked to alleviate the pressure on our high school guidance counselors, which have a 300-to-1 student to counselor ratio. The program was built to allow students to get a leg up what their next steps were going to be, whether it was college advising, applications for universities, scholarships, FAFSA, TASFA, apprenticeship programs, certificate programs. It was all about giving back to the students that needed it most. And that was one of the first areas where I came into inequity up close with the students. They were juggling jobs, school, taking care of siblings because their parents worked multiple jobs. All of this while they're trying to think of something for their future, work toward their next steps. And that continued me working again in another outreach program, GeoForce, where we're trying to build the next generation of STEM leaders. And we all have heard about the attack on our public education here in the state of Texas. Our program was built to introduce geoscience to students, which is not a high school requirement, but is very much needed for students who are entering any of the strong STEM workforce. And this program was recognized by the Obama administration in 2015 with our work in science, engineering, and math mentoring. But what made me want to change was in 2023 when the legislature decided to remove DEI programs across the state. And just feeling that our students who are trying to climb out of the situations that they're in and the leadership at the top cutting the ropes from them, it didn't sit right with me. And that was an effort that I said something needs to change. And when I noticed that we were losing the public education advocate of James Tallarico, couldn't sit around and wait, and I knew something had to change. And so that's where I stepped in to run for office. Now, our public education, we are sitting near the bottom half in our per pupil spending. We need to change and reallocate our funds. One of the biggest areas that is tragic, in my belief, is the money that actually goes to our charter schools here in Texas. Over $5 billion is reallocated to charter schools that impact half the efficacy that our public education schools do. And many millions of those dollars then go out of the state because the charter schools are organized from states like Florida, Colorado, Arkansas. So we are losing billions, and we are then sending millions out of the state that is unaccounted for. And these are some of the things that need to be addressed immediately, not just on a economic standpoint, but on an education standpoint, when our teachers are having to count their paper clips because they're worried if they're going to run out by the end of the year. These are things that need to be addressed immediately because the future of our state does rely within the students that are about to take over from us as we get older. So ensuring that our public education is well maintained, is well funded, that the allocation per student is not on an average daily attendance, but it is through their enrollment that we are funding our public education to its fullest. I also want to, in my 2.5 minutes left, talk about a couple other topics that weigh on my heart a lot, and that is the healthcare that we have here in the state of Texas. As a father to a 2.5-year-old daughter that I've been stay-at-home dad with these last couple of years that I've been looking after, I do worry that I'm raising a daughter in a state that has the most restrictive abortion laws on the books. I think about that, and actually that has been a reason that while canvassing, I met a grandmother. She is leaving because her son, who has a daughter, he didn't want to raise her here. He didn't want to raise her in a state that had such strict abortion laws that put public education on the back burner. So he found a job up in the Northeast, and she is following. So we are losing people from our state that are leaving because of what the leadership is doing. And then finally, we are such a growing state in certain numbers, though. Even though I mentioned we're losing people, we have a lot of people that are still coming in. We have a lot of people that are coming in, and we need to take care of our natural resources here. We only have one Texas, and we need to make sure that we are taking care of our water. I've read recently about how Corpus Christi is already drilling into their aquifers very densely. water resources, when we talk about this, we have AI data centers that are coming in that are unchecked, unregulated, not using recycled, reused water. We need to address these types of basic infrastructure issues because we have such an increase in the population, a draw on our water. And let's be honest, Texas has a huge agricultural impact on the country. And when we start impacting our water, it will impact our farmers, it will impact our agriculture, and then it is going to cause impact on our economic output. So these things are very well connected and they need to be addressed. This is not something that is a 2-year down the road. We need to make sure we are ready for a Texas that is 20 years down the road, because otherwise we're setting ourselves up for failure. And that is not something that I am comfortable doing, leaving it up to chance. And I want to be proud of the state that I live in, of Texas. We have chosen to live here and raise a family here. And I want to be proud of this state. And I hope y'all do too. But it is going to take work from a lot of us to make sure that we have a place that we're proud of. So that is my time. And thank y'all very much. I would love to have your support.
Thank you very much, John. Really appreciate your good comments. Okay, and now we'll shift to the questions. We have a dozen questions out there. We'll get to as many as we can. As I said, we're going to somewhat shift the order of speaking. We'll go in the same order. However, our first speaker, Nathan Boynton, will go answer the question last. So Kate will be the lucky winner of the first question. And we have some voting. And there was a tie, I think I see the total vote. Yeah, between immigration enforcement and healthcare. So since we're going to have Kate speak, let's talk about healthcare.
Mike.
Okay. Affordability of healthcare is a major concern across the state. ACA subsidies reduced, Medicaid cutbacks on the way, rural hospitals closing, fewer doctors moving to Texas from within and outside the USA. What would you do to reduce the cost of healthcare? Starting with Kate.
Yeah, so I think the first biggest thing that we ought to do is take federal subsidies for Medicaid, expand ACA subsidies. It's a 90-10 split, but the overall finances of that would essentially be a wash for the state of Texas. And we have not so far been successful, even though the vast majority of Texans support this. We have not been successful in the legislature. I say they, in getting this through to a vote. So an alternative is take it to the people, a constitutional amendment. And so that is something that I think that we could get potentially past some of the Republicans. And the argument is, you take the decision out of your hands and you put it before the people, and therefore we could have subsidies for healthcare. I think that one of the things that James Tallarico did, who of course is the rep in our district, was reduce the cost of insulin. And I've seen in my own clients how that has impacted them. So I think the state working to reduce the cost of prescription drugs is really important. And my first point about expanding Medicaid subsidies would help impact keeping rural hospitals open. So those are my top line responses to expanding healthcare access in Texas.
Thank you, Kate. Okay, next question to Sam. Sam, if I may take that liberty of your nickname, what would you do to reduce the cost of healthcare?
There we go. Unmute. You can hear me, right? Okay.
Right.
Right. So I think we're all pretty much going to be on the same page here. But first, we have to expand Medicaid. Texas is leaving billions of federal dollars on the table every year, and that decision alone drives up uncompensated care costs, which ultimately gets passed on to the insured families through higher premiums. Expansion would stabilize rural hospitals, reduce emergency room overuse, and lower overall system costs. Second, we need to tackle insurance practices. Texans should not be facing surprise bills, which I was so elated to work on in my very first session ever back in 2019 with Representative Ryan Guillen. Texans also face delayed approvals or denials for medically necessary care. We can strengthen oversight of insurers, improve transparency and pricing, which I know Nathan has covered before, and make sure that prior authorization processes are not being abused by insurance companies to save corporations money at the patient's expense. Third, we need to grow and modernize our healthcare workforce, allowing providers like nurse practitioners to practice to the full extent of their training, and investing in loan repayment and workforce pipelines helps increase access and competition, which will ultimately lower costs. As the Chief of Staff to Representative Donna Howard, we have worked incessantly over the last 8 years, trying to expand the scope of practice for nurse practitioners so that they can begin to serve rural communities and rural areas. There's such a need. We have healthcare deserts all across the state, and by expanding the scope of practice for nurse practitioners, we'll be able to fill that gap for our rural communities. And that's something that I've consistently worked on with the Texas Medical Association, who is vehemently against this. But also, finally, prevention matters. Investing in primary care, reproductive health, mental health services, and evidence-based public health programs reduce expensive crisis care later. Healthcare costs are not inevitable, but we can do a lot to ensure that we can address those issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. Appreciate your comments very much. And next to Jeremy, what would you do, Jeremy, to reduce healthcare costs?
Thank you for the question. As Sam and Kate both said, we have probably a lot of the same positions here, but definitely the healthcare starts with expanding Medicaid. We should have done it years ago. It's the single biggest thing that we can really do to lower costs for families and really keep rural hospitals open, but also address care shortages right here in one of our biggest cities in the state, and really bring billions of dollars of tax dollars back home instead of sending them to DC. So that's the first step. We've got to do that. When people can't get preventative care and see a doctor before a crisis, we absolutely are spending more money across the entire system. So I'm proud to be endorsed by the integral care workers. And they really did that, I think, because they know exactly what these problems are. And they see that I've been with them every step of the way to fight for better health care, better access. And so I'm really proud of that endorsement, because they really are on the front lines. They know how the system is breaking down, and they see every day how untreated conditions turn into really expensive emergencies. They see how workforce shortages drive up costs for everyone. And really, we need to invest in the people who provide the care. And I'll go right back to this: fair wages, safe staffing levels, and the ability to do their jobs without unnecessary red tape. And I really want to bring real experience to this work as well. I've served on our healthcare trust fund for the last 15 years, navigating the implementation of the Affordable Care Act and making sure our members have really high quality care while keeping costs under control. And I've seen firsthand how smart policy and strong oversight can really lower premiums, improve access, and protect working families. And unfortunately, we've got too many Texans that are technically covered, but they can't afford to use that coverage. And that means cracking down on junk fees, increasing transparency, and making sure state dollars go toward care, not bureaucracy.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Appreciate it very much. So our next question, or the question will go to John now. John, what would you do to reduce costs of healthcare in Texas?
Yes. So 3 things that I think we need to look for, and it's going to be a bit of a broken record here. It's going to go around and around, but access, increase access with ACA expansion. This is not just a compassionate move, but also an economic move for the state. So I believe that's the first thing that we need to work for. And, got to throw Kate, it's always an awesome idea when you hear something like that, putting that motion to the people. Beyond that, price transparency. Making sure that people understand when they are getting into some of these medical situations, that they understand what the cost is going in. Those things should be upfront, not something that you're surprised with a bill after, and getting bills when you have a baby, and I see how much things cost, and that, I think sticker shock really hits you on some of these things, and that should not be the case. Price transparency needs to be put forth for our people, so that they can understand and make sure that they are working for themselves and that they can afford these things. And then the final is preventative care. And I want to take this a step further to talk about that Proper nutrition is part of preventative care. We need to make sure that we have adequate nutrition for people across the state. We have far too many food deserts where people rely upon low density calorie meals that do not provide proper nutrition. And these are long-term effects that lead to issues down the road that add to our medical expenses for the people of the state. So we need to make sure that we have proper nutrition, starting definitely with younger ages, so that that our residents are taken care of from start to the end.
Thank you very much, John. And the last person will be Nathan to answer what he would do to reduce healthcare. Nathan?
All right. Well, just to
Healthcare
kind of
costs.
repeat what sorry. So yeah, just kind of repeat what everyone else said, expand Medicaid. Definitely agree with Kate on putting it to the people as a vote. I think that would take some of the pressure off some of the politicians that feel like they don't want to vote for something because they might seem like a socialist, the Republicans. But yeah, and then regulating the cost, because yeah, as Kate said, James Tallarico did put a bill forth to regulate the cost of insulin at $25 to make it a cap. So just do that across the board for other medication, healthcare, health insurance. As I said, Canada does it with 9 million more people and $500 billion less a year. They're providing cheap, affordable healthcare to their people. So it can be done. The money's there. We don't need to raise taxes. We can do it. They are proof. We just need to ask them for help if we don't know how to do it. But yeah, just regulating the cost and expanding access and making it affordable for everyone.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Appreciate it. Short and sweet. So our next question will, in fact, cover immigration enforcement, and we will begin with Sam. Sam, what support should state and local government give to immigration enforcement, and how can state and local government hold ICE accountable for their actions and ensure that ICE treats detainees humanely?
Absolutely. So thank you so much for your question. I was born and raised in a border community myself. I'm a proud daughter of immigrants. My parents fought for the American dream, which is what brings me to the Zoom call today and talking to you amazing folks that have been doing the really great work. I want to ensure that I am a pinnacle of hope, not just for immigrant families in Texas, but immigrant families across the country. It's an incredibly important time for the next generation of leadership to step up. And we need to ensure that we have immigrant families in the positions that we're running for so that immigrant families can begin to see themselves in these positions. But of course, in terms of immigration enforcement, I would say that this is primarily a federal responsibility, but state and local governments do play a role in protecting our constitutional rights, public safety, and human dignity. State and local law enforcement should not be compelled to act as federal immigration agents. Their primary responsibility is to build trust with our communities and keep communities safe. When local police are perceived as immigration enforcement, victims and witnesses stop reporting crimes, which undermines public safety completely for everyone. And this must not be done, which is why it's still in the courts. Now, Governor Abbott has essentially given the right for our Department of Public Safety to essentially act as deportation officers. Rest assured, when I am elected, I will absolutely fight for these issues. And more so, the Rio Grande Valley and our border communities sadly do not have the most vocal legislators. As a woman that was born and raised in a border community, I fully will prioritize immigration as an issue because it's important to me as a daughter of immigrants. At the same time, accountability and transparency are absolutely critical when it comes to ICE and ICE cooperations here in Texas. I would support legislation requiring for the state or local communities to that contract with ICE to be able to have full transparency.
Thank you, Sam. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much.
Jeremy, question to you. What support should state and local government give to immigration enforcement? How can state and local government hold ICE accountable and also ensure that ICE treats detainees humanely?
Well, let me be clear. We should not collaborate with ICE at all. State and local governments have a responsibility to protect the people who actually live in our communities, not act as some sort of extension of a police state that is absolutely hell-bent on attacking our immigrant neighbors and families. I've spent nearly 20 years, as I said earlier, working alongside immigrant workers and families, from Know Your Rights trainings to fighting for protections for wage theft and abusive employers. I've recovered hundreds of thousands of dollars for immigrant workers who have been taken advantage of by some of the worst contractors in the state of Texas. And I've seen firsthand how ICE's tactics create fear, they silence victims, and they absolutely destabilize our neighborhoods. We're dealing with it right here where I'm president of Windsor Hills Neighborhood Association. And so we have to focus on public safety, not some sort of political theater, which is what's happening right now at the absolute expense of actual human beings. And so we've got to invest in community services. We've got to have legal resources available. We've got to have worker protections and not funneling local tax dollars into unconstitutional raids or detentions. I mean, that's flat out. We should not collaborate and we should not fund detention centers. We absolutely have to strengthen local policies that limit information sharing. And I know APD is dealing with that now, prohibit local participation in ICE operations. We've got to find out a way to remove the mask and have transparency. And we've got to make sure that every single person detained has due process. We've got to stop being un-American, which is what's happening right now. And we've got to hold ICE accountable. We've got to have transparency. So we've got to require public reporting on raids, detainers, complaints. It means supporting community organizations that document these abuses, because that's who's doing the real important work right now. And we've got to help families navigate this complicated, often system that it's absolutely attacking them. So we've got to push back at the state level. We've got to push back at the local level and really make sure that we're doing the right thing by our immigrant communities.
Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate it very much. And next up is John. John, what support should state and local government give to immigration enforcement, and how can state and local government hold ICE accountable and ensure that ICE treats detainees humanely?
So the first thing I'm going to say is that I want to bring back that any of our federal offices, you look at their motto, somewhere in there is something about honor and integrity. And unfortunately, that has disappeared in the work that they have done. I think we need to reignite the people back into some form of honor and integrity in the work that they do when they're at the federal level. And I know that's a very difficult thing to do right now, but that's the first thing we should start talking about with these people who are masking themselves and going into the street. The second thing is, this is not only an isolated incident in cities. ICE impact into communities stretches into far rural areas in the state of Texas, and vastly impacting communities that are part of Republican districts. And we need to pull them into us and say, this is happening in your community. We need to bring transparency to the issues that are happening right now and immediately. One of the best ways I think we're going to try and accomplish this, so we see transparency, that is a fast way to get word out, is through the use of things like social media, that we are pushing further and pushing back against some of these instances where ICE is using a terror tactic against our communities. So transparency through utilizing things like social media, bringing our Republican colleagues to this issue up front, because it is impacting their communities and not just something that's happening in our cities. Finally, it's working with local nonprofit organizations that have been doing this immigration service. Kate, I gave you a shout out last time. I'm going to give you another shout out again. The work that Kate does in protecting our communities needs to be partnered with and partnered in a heavy scale, because we need to make sure that we are using all forms to protect our communities when they're experiencing terror like this.
Thank you, John, very much. And now, Nathan, what support should state and local government give to immigration enforcement, and how can state and local government hold ICE accountable and ensure that ICE treats detainees humanely?
Well, I would like it if we didn't give them any type of support, but I think we should get rid of the private detention centers, because there's no oversight on how they're treating people at those. If we made those at least state ran, it'd be easier to regulate and have oversight on how people are being treated. Also, I'd like to ban them from not being able to wear masks and be unidentified. I don't think that should be allowed. And I'd want to hold police officers accountable that sit there and watch ICE officers either execute people and let them leave, or tamper with the scene, or like we've seen the footage of them throwing blind people on the street and just harming people. Police should intervene and arrest those officers that are doing that and be held accountable if they don't. So those are some things I'd like to see. and just not help them. But I know, as Kate said, they're kind of hiding what they're doing here by getting the police to go issue the warrants and do the arrests. So it doesn't look like ICE is doing much here in Texas when they're actually doing a lot. The police should not be doing their work and should not be allowed to. So I would not want to support that. So that's pretty much, yeah, that would be it.
Thank you very much, Nathan. And over to Kate now. Kate, what support should state and local government give to immigration enforcement? And how can state and local government hold ICE accountable and ensure that ICE treats detainees humanely?
Immigration enforcement is a federal issue, and DHS has the biggest budget as compared to all other federal law enforcement agencies combined. The feds do not need help from the state of Texas, and yet, in the last 5 years, six almost, we have spent over $18 billion on Operation Lone Star, which number one has resulted in fewer than 1% of the border apprehensions. Number two has resulted in human rights abuses and a massive overspend. And with just that same amount of money, we could have increased teacher salaries by $8,000 or tripled mental health services in the state of Texas for students. And this is like very pie in the sky, right? That we want to stop spending money on Operation Lone Star, and that we want to get rid of the masks, and that we don't want to have detention centers. And I completely agree with all of that. And I think that we also need to talk reality. I mean, we don't know what the outcome of the election is going to be, but what are we actually going to get in there and do in the 2027 legislature? So I think some things that might actually be on the table are, number one, we clarify that we don't racially profile in the state of Texas, that no one racially profiles. Number two, we clarify that the Constitution of the United States reigns in the state of Texas. And that means that we don't detain people based on non-judicial warrants, on administrative warrants that haven't gone through due process. And the last thing I'll say is that we have the Senate Bill 4 from 2023 is completely unconstitutional, illegal. It's also impractical. And I was testifying in the committee hearings. This is a state law that creates a way for state criminal judges to deport people. And there was a conversation around, how are we going to deport people who aren't from Mexico? And they said, oh, I don't know, and pass it straight through committee. And so I intend to bring that information to light on floor debates when I'm in the Capitol.
Thank you very much, Kate. That'll complete the immigration question. And let's shift to education with Jeremy answering the question first. Jeremy, higher education is under assault. Funding, DEI, academic freedom, and freedom of speech are impacted. What would you do to support higher education?
Thank you for that question. Well, I'll continue to do what I've already been doing, and that's stand with our professors, our state employees, our students. That's why I'm endorsed by the University Democrats, the ACC Student Democrats, the AYD, the Young Democrats, because I've been standing in those fights for years now with them. And unfortunately, it's getting worse and worse every day with the state leadership that is absolutely attacking our freedom of academic freedom, our freedom on campuses to actually protest, rally, register voters even, which is absolutely attacks on our fundamental democracy. And so I will continue to stand with them. At the state level, we've absolutely, once elected, got to have protections for our professors, for our students to actually rally and also register folks. So, I mean, I'm going to be right there where I've always been. As a former educator, as someone that actually worked for the National Education Association, fighting for teachers and students on a daily basis, there are so many fights to be had in the legislature when it comes to education. And unfortunately, this is a concerted effort for them to absolutely attack from every angle to ensure that we're off our footing and to make sure that we're absolutely taking off our game. And so we've got to have folks that can absolutely focus on this. And as Sam said earlier, we're losing some absolute champions, but we have a breadth of new leaders coming into the legislature, one of the largest freshman class ever. And I believe we have the opportunity to really make some real change in this area.
Thank you, Jeremy. Next question will go to John. John, what would you do to support education?
So, and this was in terms of the higher education that we're talking about,
Higher
correct?
education. Yeah,
The higher
sorry, sir.
education. Yeah, because we've seen a lot of crackdowns within our higher education professors being removed for having certain readings that colleges, universities, campuses should be open areas for discussion that are going to push the boundaries of our own, intellectual, beings and safety. And they should be safe physically, but it should push us emotionally and intellectually to learn more. And we are restricting that and taking it away. We've seen it. And one of the biggest impacts is especially on our research, because professors, research scientists are no longer coming to the university, or they're leaving and going to other universities where they can continue and not feel the pressure from the state. And what that does is that drastically drops the amount of income that goes to the university. The UT right now has about 50% overhead with grants that come in from a lot of research, and it is impacting us very significantly that this universities, especially our flagship universities, Texas and Texas A&M, are going to be under financial duress when we start to lose that funding. And so we need to make sure that we are allowing our staff, our research facilities, our researchers to come in and be able to conduct the research that they're doing and not feel threats from the state that are going to censor them, that are going to push them out, and that are going to fine or academically sack them. Second, again, they should be physically safe spaces, but push us intellectually. And so for the students as well, they have the right to protest. They have the right to grieve their issues and bring that to the attention of the people at the university and with the city. And when we start cracking down on that, we start removing these particular places for them to express that, then we are effectively creating this 1984 George Orwell overlord state. And that is not what we need in our universities. We need to allow that freedom. And
thank you, John. Appreciate it very much. And next to Nathan. Nathan, what would you do to support higher education?
One thing, I don't know if this would even be allowed or something I could pass, but I would love to make it so you can't charge interest rate on student loans. Because the amount that people end up paying for school time they're done is disgusting. So I would love to regulate interest rates. I would love it if we could make it so there's no interest rates. And then second, I don't know if Texas already has something like this. If they do, I apologize. But I'm originally from Washington State, and we had a program called Running Start. So once you hit 10th grade in school, you could start taking community college classes. So by the time you graduate, you have 2 years of community college plus your high school diploma. And I think that would be a good way to get people and it was free. So get them a free at least 2 years of college under the belt to help with their education.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Appreciate your comments. Kate, over to you. What would you do to support and improve higher education in our state?
So Sam talked about in her intro the situation with in-state tuition for the Dreamers and how the ledge effectively killed the bill, and then there was an immediate workaround in litigation that has really taken away higher education for so many Dreamers in Texas, which is hundreds of thousands of students. So I think that's a really critical thing. The ledge can come back in and re-clarify and provide in-state tuition for Dreamers in Texas. There are appropriations that defund and control behavior of faculty within higher educational institutions, and that needs to stop. There needs to be tenure protections, and some of the DEI, Mexican American Studies, some of these programs need to be protected and left alone. And the other thing that has really been concerning is the attack on student groups and the right to free speech, the right to gather in the students, and the ledge needs to back off of this. And in one of these forums that we had recently, Senator Zaffarini came and spoke, and she's been really a champion of higher education. And she said that she thinks that higher ed protections is actually the most important issue facing the state of Texas. It's the first time I've heard anybody say higher ed. A lot of people say public ed. And I can see why she said that. And I think that the systematic dismantling of students' ability to go to college, their ability to afford college, their ability to learn freely, to gather, to express themselves, and the ability for professors to teach them is really concerning. And from an economic perspective, it's also going to harm the state of Texas because foreign students and out-of-state students are absolutely not going to come here to study the way that we are behaving. So there's a lot of things to fix.
Thank you very much, Kate. And last, over to you, Sam. What would you do to improve higher education?
Sure. So thank you for your question. As a higher ed staffer, Representative Donna Howard was the vice chairwoman of the Higher Education Committee. So I was her lead staffer this last legislative session. I was incredibly proud to write a point of order, which is essentially dismantles legislation or a bill, kills a bill effectively. I wrote a point of order on the bill that would ban on-campus protesting, specifically the criminalization piece of that legislation. So initially, that legislation had a trigger mechanism that if students or anyone was protesting on college campuses, the state would have the ability to send law enforcement and place those individuals in jail. Now, we didn't see that happen because I strategically wrote a point of order to make sure that we are grabbing that language out of the bill and throwing it out. You can only do that when you have the legislative experience and the strategy to be able to accomplish those things. But aside from what I've also been able to do, when I get elected, I absolutely plan to file legislation creating a first-generation tuition support program that would provide targeted financial assistance to students who are the first in their families to attend college. I'm a first-generation college graduate, and first-generation students, we often face financial, structural, and informational barriers that others do not. And this legislation would prioritize need-based aid, simplify eligibility, and ensures that students can enroll and persist without being forced to drop out due to the cost. In addition to that, we must protect in-state tuition eligibility for our DACA recipients, providing clarifications of the law to say that they can qualify. We need to strengthen need-based financial aid as well. This last legislative session, Republicans introduced a bill that would essentially get rid of set-aside tuition, which is specifically tuition that is set aside from public universities to disperse to low-income students. And Republicans presented this. Now, thankfully, we were able to kill it in committee, which is strategy that only skilled legislative staff can do.
Thank you very much, Sam. We appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate those answers to the question on higher education. The next question involves women's reproductive health, and the first answerer will be John. So Texas ranks 34th for maternal death, which has increased 56% between 2019 and 2022. With severe restrictions on women's health care, things will continue to worsen. What do you propose to turn this around?
So, healthcare, the discussion about women's reproductive rights is healthcare. That needs to be defined, that it is part of healthcare and what we are providing for the people. And as you just mentioned, the increase of okay, so as a father of a daughter, and I think about how we're going to provide for women in this state to have the right for choice, that is something that should be, towards the top of all of our agendas. And I know it will be there for the top of our agendas, that we are providing this opportunity for women, that they get to choose, and they're not making a plan or putting into their, pregnancy playbook on how am I going to get to New Mexico or Colorado or somewhere else if I need medical care. There was effort for, life of the mother definition this last session, but that needs to go further. This is not and should not be, taken by what I believe is a push from far right and Christian so-called values on what they should deem is, abortion. We need to make sure we take a step back, that this is medical care that needs to be provided regularly and throughout, not just with doctors that are housed or attached to certain hospitals. So we need to make sure that we are increasing the access through and this is going to be a tough discussion with a lot of people, because there's one of the one of the areas when knocking on doors and you ask, why are you voting Republican? They're going to tell you, well, it's one issue, it's abortion. So we are going to have a lot of work
10
to
seconds.
bring these people to our sides about why this is healthcare and not an act that needs to be brought forth through, scripture talk. It is healthcare basic.
Thank you very much, John. I appreciate your comments. And next to Nathan. Nathan, what would you do to improve outcomes for women's reproductive health in the state?
Well, as John said, it's part of healthcare, which is a human right. I would put bills forth to reinstate reproductive rights. Because as Sam said, like, miscarriage care is abortion care. It is important to have because people are getting sick and dying because doctors can't do anything because they're afraid of going to jail. Like, Texas went way too strict and people are dying from that. It needs to be fixed. If you value human life and care about people, we need to fix this. So yeah, I put bills together to try to reinstate reproductive rights. That's best. Yeah, I guess that's what I would do. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much, Nathan.
Right.
Appreciate it. Oh, sorry, were you done?
Yeah, I'm done. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. So, Kate, what would you do to turn around the dire situation for women's reproductive health in our state?
First of all, I just have to say, Nathan, I love the way you just come out and say what you believe. It's just so good on these forms. This obviously is a very personal issue for me. I feel very strongly about it. I grew up in Texas, a young woman, didn't have health insurance, went to Planned Parenthood every month for my contraception. When Wendy Davis was filibustering, I strapped my baby on, who's now 13, to a baby carrier, and I went down to the Senate gallery in support, and I have cared deeply about this issue all through my life. My stepmom lives in Boston and Massachusetts, and she attends these pill packing parties where she goes with other women in Boston and mail abortion prescription pills to women in Texas who need abortions. And the ledge voted to criminalize that, which is like illegal and unconstitutional. But we've actually had conversations within my own family about what would happen with my stepmother if she were to be arrested coming into Texas for having done pill packing. And the fact that we have even thought to criminalize women traveling out of state to receive abortion care. I mean, it gives me goosebumps thinking about how horrific this treatment of women is. And we have so far to go to just get back to where we were. And again, like, there are the things that we believe and the things that we need to do. And then there are the things that we might actually get done in a red legislature or even maybe a balanced legislature. So we need to expand what it means when a woman's life is in danger. We need to give more room and space for doctors to make these medical decisions. We absolutely must have exceptions in the case of rape and incest. And again, as in trans care, like I said in my intro, give more room to the individuals who are making their own medical decisions and the doctors who are supporting them.
Thank you very much, Kate. And Samantha, over to you. How would you improve the outlook for women's reproductive health in the state?
Sure. So women's reproductive health is not theoretical for me. I've been at the forefront of this fight for 7 years inside the Texas legislature. I've worked through some of the most restrictive reproductive health sessions in modern Texas history. I helped navigate and advocate for clarification language around the Life of the Mother Act, which came after Senate Bill 8, which was the effective abortion ban or complete abortion ban here in the state of Texas. The reality was this back in 2023. Doctors were confused, hospitals were scared, and patients were dying. Women like Nevaeh Crane out of Central Texas, who was an 18-year-old woman who did not receive care in time because she was having a miscarriage, and doctors' hands were tied because there was no clarification in the law and they were afraid of going to jail or losing their license. We need to continue to tell those stories because those women passed away under the administration of this Republican government. And we need to continue to talk about those women and the loss of life that we experienced here in the state of Texas because of cruel legislation that Republicans passed. Clarification legislation is not enough, though. We need to restore access to comprehensive reproductive health care, including contraception access and abortion care, and then also protect providers from political interference. We need to ensure that doctors are able to do their jobs. If elected, I specifically want to serve on Article 2 of the Appropriations Committee, which oversees the Health and Human Services funding of the entire legislative budget. And real change happens in that budget. I've seen Representative Donna Howard do it time and time again. That is where we can direct resources toward evidence-based women's health programs and away from ineffective programs like Texas Thriving Families. That was formerly known as the Alternatives to Abortion program, which essentially we funded at $10 million a year, only to pass out pamphlets on how you should not be having premarital intercourse, I guess. And so it's not evidence-based. I want to work on Article 2 to ensure that we are using our state dollars and effective programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. And over to you, Jeremy. Once again, how would you turn around the dire situation of women's reproductive health in the state?
Unmute.
Got to unmute. My apologies. We all know, and thank you for the question. We all know that women's reproductive health is under attack, just like workers, just like students, just like every aspect of our free society, unfortunately. And we absolutely need leaders who know how to fight and win on this issue. We need leaders who will protect the freedom to make personal medical decisions without political interference. I trust women, I trust families, I trust doctors. I don't trust politicians to make these decisions. And so my position is simple. I think all of our positions is that reproductive health care, including abortion, is health care. And so I completely support restoring access. We've got to repeal these harmful bans. And really, we've got to ensure that no one is criminalized for seeking care or providing it. I mean, Texas deserves the full range of reproductive services, from contraceptive to cancer screenings to prenatal care, and they need safe, legal abortions because it's absolutely critical health care. And so I'm proud to have received 100% rating from Planned Parenthood. I've stood with Planned Parenthood for years in these fights to make sure that we're saving lives, and I will continue to stand alongside them in those fights. And we really need to push for policies that expand access, that protect patient privacy, that ensure doctors can provide evidence-based care without fear of criminal charges or losing their license. And we absolutely need to make sure that folks have the freedom and bodily autonomy and the respect they deserve as Texans. And so I will always stand for reproductive rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. I know we're getting close on time, but I think we could squeeze in one more question, if that's all right with everyone. This would be on affordable housing. So the question is, and the question will go first to Nathan. So it is axiomatic that housing costs are too high for many. However, reducing the cost of housing could reduce value for existing homeowners. How would you balance the tension between making housing affordable while not lowering home value for property owners?
Well, as far as making housing more affordable would be to try to encourage more multi-use housing being built, like triplexes, quadplexes, and stuff like that. I would also like to have it we can just reuse empty spaces. Like there's tons of just empty office buildings. If we can make it easier to convert those to like condos so people can buy those and live in those, because it's already structure that's built. It's already land that's there. So we're not having to try to find new land. So those are some things that I'd want to try to, make it easier for those things to be done. As far as I don't know how that would affect current housing prices by doing that. I could only think of what to do to add more housing to make it more affordable. So that would be some of the things I'd want to do.
Thank you, Nathan. Kate, how would you balance increasing housing supply or making housing more affordable while not impacting negatively the value of homes and property by property owners?
So housing is one of those areas that it can be complicated, actually, because we want to expand housing, but we want to preserve property values and we want to preserve neighborhoods. And we don't want to, step too closely on the cities that want to run the permitting, and we have environmental concerns. So there is a lot there are a lot of considerations at play, and housing is not one of those black and white issues where, it's just clear what to do. I think it can often be tangly and even nonpartisan. But I think that what we can definitely agree upon is we can expand housing. And like Nathan said, have different types of housing, have ADUs, have duplexes, and have fourplexes. And then considering how are we going to balance that out with environmental needs and property value needs? I mean, some of those considerations will have to come at play. We can reduce property taxes. We can look at reducing property taxes for elderly people, for state and city workers, and that is a way that we can definitely reduce the cost. And I think that we can try to expand the ability and the availability of housing. I think Nathan had a great idea of doing that. And so by that, we could provide tax incentives to developers that expand more affordable housing. So I think it's through incentives while really balancing the needs of individuals, neighborhoods, and the environment.
Thank you, Kate. Samantha, what are your thoughts on reducing the tension between reducing cost for housing versus not lowering property values for homeowners
Sure.
or other property owners?
So I'd first love to start by saying that we need to invest in workforce housing, specifically for our teachers, our state and public employees, our first responders. I would support programs that are targeted and prioritize those communities because they're essential workers and they deserve to live and thrive in the communities that they work in. They do so much for our community. I think it's definitely time that our government also ensures that these individuals can remain in the cities that they live, long term. In addition to that, reducing our property taxes, as Kate mentioned. But the thing about this is that our public education system has become wholly reliant on our property taxes. So the only way that we're going to be able to actually reduce property taxes, I know Republicans tout it every single session that their number one priority is going to be reduce property taxes, but they will never be able to accomplish that because they have made sure that for the last 30 years, they have essentially passed on the burden of funding our public schools to our taxpayer. Here in Austin, we pay so much in recapture. We give $700 million back to the state and recapture funds. And this is happening when our schools are closing. The only way we're going to combat affordability in Central Texas and across the state is by ensuring that we are no longer becoming completely and wholly reliant on our property tax system to fund our public schools. It should be in addition to, so that we can actually reduce your property taxes and not impact the value of your home. We need to find other funding avenues for our schools. There's an opportunity, and I haven't pulled our district yet but I'm interested to know what our community thinks. But we have the opportunity to maybe pass resort-style gambling. I would absolutely be invested in taxing the heck out of those resorts to ensure that we are getting adequate funding for our public schools. We also have the opportunity. We have the opportunity to legalize cannabis and begin taxing that. We can't put Pandora back in the box, and I think that we can find fruitful investment opportunities here in the state of Texas that we can redirect towards programs that are not going to hinder our ability to reduce the cost of living. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam. And Jeremy, how would you manage that tension between property values and affordability?
Well, that is an interesting question. I mean, we all know that affordable housing is one of the biggest challenges facing our community. And I have been in this fight for a long time. We know that families are being priced out because we're not building enough middle income and low income housing. We know the houses that we are building, as Sam said, is not attainable for our workers, our teachers, our emergency folks. And so we really are often building houses that are just completely out of reach for normal folks. And we can absolutely do better. Last week I spoke at City Council in favor of Councilmember Siegel's green social housing policy. And in the past, I've fought for Code Next, Home 1, Home 2, to make sure that we have affordable housing, we have density along transit-oriented developments, and then make sure that we're really giving homeowners and renters a chance. And so we also know that homeowners are also struggling with high mortgage and home insurance. So we really need to make sure that we're using state funds to support first-time first-time home buyers, and also long-term residents that are being harmed and kicked out of their communities by gentrification. So, I'm proud to be endorsed by ARA and a lot of affordable housing advocates because, as I said, I am not new to this fight. So, we've got to increase housing supply. That's absolutely job one. That means updating outdated zoning. That means speeding up permitting. That means allowing more mixed income and missing middle income housing near schools, jobs, and transit. That way, the homes are being built where workers actually live and actually don't have to live in completely other communities. Second, we have to have deeply affordable units. I'll support policies that expand affordable housing, that protect existing affordable housing units, and ensure that public investments come with long-term affordability, not lip service and a few units that really don't serve the community and really have real community benefits. So, and the last thing is we have to take care of working people too. Unfortunately, the housing industry is the worst for workers in the entire country. Here in Texas, folks are absolutely dying on the job. They're not making good wages. And so as we're building houses, we also have to make sure that the workers that we want to live in those houses are being taken care of too. And as the labor candidate in this race, I'm absolutely going to stand up for those teachers, construction workers, students, the retirees, everybody who builds and maintains this community to make sure that we have housing they can access.
Thank you, John. I think we went over our time there a little bit, but that's fine. Excellent answer. Thank you. And now, Jeremy, I said, over to John, our final answerer. How would you balance that tension, John, between affordability of homes and maintaining property values for property owners?
So I think this is, multi-area that we need to address. One, it is the access to housing, and we've heard it several times when Nathan started off in several different areas and levels of housing that include low-income housing, middle-income housing. You heard that. But we also need to address the rising cost of property insurance here in the state of Texas. Texas has some of the highest property insurance that really increases, across the board for everybody that is a homeowner dealing with these rises and increase. And it's not just, things like property tax or mortgage, but the vast increase that we've seen in insurance. And that has come from big market insurers who have disappeared from the state, leaving little to no room for competition. We have seen that they are allowed to have price increases without any kind of regulation. So we need to step in and say enough is enough first, because that is actually vastly impacting many of our retirees who are still here, who have served the state of Texas, who have served our schools, and they're relying on a retiree income that we have not seen a change. Cost of living adjustment, so they are stretching their dollars further and further. So addressing things like our insurance premiums, first and foremost, that's going to reduce affordability for people who are in their homes without drastically impacting their current value of those particular homes. We are seeing a cooling off recently of homeowners or home values because we did have such a spike when it came through the COVID years. We saw a very overvaluation. That was many people coming in. And the last thing I really want to talk about is the reduction of private equity firms purchasing single family homes. When we see this, they are utilizing that to be on their books as a liquid asset for them to make more and more riskier investments, but they are reducing and taking that inventory out of the opportunity for families to make that jump from living in apartments to purchasing homes because they can buy it cash on hand and put it right on their books. And that keeps valuation higher than it truly should be. So those are the things.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it very much. And thanks to all of you for participating in our candidate check-in Zoom tonight. And if everyone else on the line, I appreciate your patience and interest. If you would all give everyone a big Indivisible 1431 thank you to our candidates. Give it up in lots of hearts and applause and firecrackers and all those cool emojis. And thank you all. Just very quickly,